Now, can you attribute that to pornography? Certainly part. Like if I was a young woman and I was looking at the pornography world online, I'd think, yeah, maybe not.
One of the interesting things we noticed when we were doing some research on this was what the top Google search around this subject matter is, how do I quit? And I feel like the third one is, how do I quit? And that it's in such high quantity of people searching Google for how to quit pornography that it feels desperate. Like it feels desperate.
Well, why wouldn't it be addictive?
And why doesn't pornography feel good to people?
That's a good question. That's a good question. Well, there's nothing heroic about it, that's for sure. It's like it's obviously nothing to be proud of. That's a different issue than whether or not it's wrong, right?
Yeah.
It's certainly not an accomplishment.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think anyone would disagree about that. It's not an accomplishment. Well, maybe sex is supposed to be an accomplishment. Maybe you violate the spirit of sexuality itself when it's not an accomplishment. You certainly do that if you rape, right? So is it an accomplishment? Probably. So what if your accomplishment is false? Well, then what are you betraying? Well, if it's associated with sex, maybe you're betraying the most fundamental possible thing. It's certainly possible. Like, well, there's life in sex. That's pretty much that, right? You're alive and you reproduce from a biological perspective. And so you're violating the spirit of what? Maybe you're violating the spirit of relationship. Maybe you're violating the spirit of adventure, the spirit of romance, the spirit of reproduction, the spirit of life. Likely.
It's so interesting that a lot of people seem to be angry at it. They seem to be angry with what it's done to them.
They should be angry.
Even on an individual level, people seem, in the comment section of these episodes that we've done about the subject matter, people seem to be angry about its existence and what it's done to them.
Yeah, they should be angry. They should be outraged. It's outrageous. It's outrageous.
Would you ban it if you were in charge of the world?
I don't know how to answer that. I think any policies that require force rather than voluntary compliance are generally bad policies. There are restrictions that should be placed on its distribution, but I would have to spend a lot of time thinking through what those were from a policy perspective. I think it's wrong. No, I don't think. I know it's wrong. That doesn't mean I know how that should be dealt with at the level of policy. It's complicated. I do understand why young men and young women are angry about it. It's like, where are the adults? Where are the adults? Where have they gone? They're not protecting like 11-year-old kids from what you can see on the net. You know, I remember when I was a kid, I got a hold of some of these underground comics from the 1960s. And a lot of the underground comic artists they're pretty pathological creatures. Like Robert Crumb's a good example. Crumb led a pretty good life for someone as demented as he is. And there's a very famous documentary made about the Crumb brothers. And Robert Crumb was the establisher. He was one of the people who established the genre of graphic novel, really, back in the 60s in Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco. And his imagination goes places that you don't want to be along for the ride. Seriously, like seriously. And I read some of that material when I was like 11, you know. I never forgot it. It was shocking as hell. And like typical 11-year-old now, it's like there are things that he is going to see that he'll never forget. It's not good.
And the brain is still forming at that age, isn't it? So it's
definitely.
It's an interesting way to shock the brain.
Well, we also don't know. Well, that's right. We have no idea whatsoever what a diet of pornography exposure does to somebody who's, making their way through puberty.
What would you say to those individuals then that have been Googling that, like how to quit? Because I imagine if we thought about percentages, I'd say, 90% of people that are listening right now watch pornography? At least, I don't know what the numbers are, but it's a lot of people. It's the vast majority.
Write down what it's doing to you.
Write down what it's doing to you.
Write down exhaustively. Everything you think it might be doing to you. Write it down, everything. Don't worry about whether you're right or not. Like, Maybe it's not doing some of the things you think it might be doing, but make an exhaustive list. Then start thinking through. Is that what you want? Is that what you want? And then write down what you want instead. That'll help, because if you're going to, look, any hedonistic endeavor is rewarding in the moment, obviously. The problem is the price you pay for it in the medium to long run, right? That's the problem. And it's the contradiction between those two things that's the problem. Okay, now if you want to quit doing something that's gratifying in the short term, you need to know why, right? Because otherwise you won't have the willpower. You won't have the part of you that thinks, well, what the hell will win? What the hell? Which is what people think when they do something they shouldn't do. And they should notice what they say to themselves when they're making that rationalization, because what the hell refers to hell. And the reason to stop doing things that are self-destructive is because they're self-destructive. I mean, is that the sort of person you want to be? Is that the model you'd like to have for your son, for example? Is that the way you would imagine that someone you admire would act? These are good questions to ask yourself. You know, are you the sort of person that is acting out a pattern that you think is admirable? I don't think pornography, masturbation fits into the ideal of heroic masculinity. I don't think anybody thinks that. There's something furtive about it and second rate. Obviously, it's ridiculous in a sense that we even have to have this discussion, because obviously.
Well, these things creep in, don't they, to society, and they become
That's
normal.
for sure.
So
first they creep, then they rampage.
We almost can't remember a time, if you're a young person, when there wasn't pornography.
You definitely can't remember.
You open up an app and you get
absolutely 100%. Oh, and it's going to get way worse. Wait till there are AI-equipped adjustable pornographic succubi. Then we're really going to have fun, because we're already at the point now where, with a decent chat bot, a really alienated young man can have a better conversation with a decent chat bot than with anybody he's ever talked to in his entire life. Right, now they're going to get a lot smarter, and soon they're going to have, there's already services of this sort available. They'll be fully fleshed out two-dimensional women. They're not women. Simulacra of women. Right, so yeah.
It's interesting, because with my hedonistic...
Design your own girlfriend.
She won't argue with you. She won't do the 90 minutes a week.
Yeah, right. She'll give you everything you want, but that's not true. She'll give the worst part of you everything it wants. Jesus, that's not good. The worst, weakest part of you will get exactly what it wants. That's not good. That's seriously not good.
I mean, that's what pornography is kind of doing, right?
Definitely. Yeah. Well,